Marie Louise continues, the town is fairly large and very pretty, but has no commerce. In the evening after dinner, I received the authorities. Unfortunately, I mentioned to General Caffarelli what I had been told about the two gunners. On reaching home, he sent for Monsieur Berdier, and not only scolded him, but treated him in a manner one would not even use towards one's servant. When he had vented his anger, he said to him, you see that I'm hasty, but it quickly passes off. I know very well that had I been Monsieur Berdier, I should not have taken it so patiently. General Caffarelli is incredibly hot-tempered and suspicious. At the same time, he is an excellent man, quick and clever, but nonetheless intolerant. In conversation, he must always be right, expecting everyone to be of the same opinion as himself, which is not always possible, as sometimes he is mistaken. Moreover, the charm of conversation lies in diversity of opinions. On the 4th, at 8 in the morning, we set out once more, happy that it was the last day of our voyage. We were growing weary of the beauties of nature and found it very tiresome to remain inactive all day. Once again, we looked upon Koblenz and the fortress of Ehrenbreitstein, where on the left stands a little pyramid on a low mound to mark the tomb of Generals Marceau and Hoche. Neuendorf, a small village, also on the left bank of the river, is a place which supplies Koblenz with vegetables. On the right, in the island of Nidworth, is a convent, besides two others at Valsheim and Basilic, not more than 100 paces away. On the right bank is the town of Valander, which carries on many industries and has many factories. After passing a number of other villages, the names of which it would be tedious to repeat, we arrived at Anger, the summer residence of the Princess of Nassau-Wilburg, which is beautifully situated. The house is very large, but has no garden. The prince has made roads through the woods of the adjacent mountains, in which there is an old chateau called Ilgen. To the left is the village of Fisterthum, famous in history for one of the most bloody conflicts fought at the beginning of the revolution between the French and Germans. Upon a mountain on the right bank is Montreux, the summer residence of the Princess of Neuwied, constructed entirely of wood. After this, one of the finest views of the Rhine voyage may be seen, a smiling plain framed by mountains, set off the Abbey of Romsdorf. Two of the hills in the distance on the left are said to have formerly been volcanoes, owing to the amount of lava found there. At the back is a convent of Capuchins, situated on the lake, which is several leagues in circumference, the bottom of which has never been found. Neuwied, a charming little town, is on the right bank, close to the river. The town is well built, the castle is small but pleasantly situated, having a pleasure garden bordered by alleys of magnificent poplars. The reigning princess is a lady brimming with wit and sensibility, who was left a widow while very young, with a number of children whom she has brought up extremely well. She is also an authoress, many poems having been written by her, which are said to have merit. In this town is an establishment of Moravian brethren, whom I was disappointed not to have seen. I am told they are exactly similar to those I saw 2 years ago at Zeist in Holland. Each brother has his particular trade, and the money produced by the sale of their crafts goes into the common purse. They assemble daily in the great hall to pray. The spinsters are set apart, the bachelors are in another wing, the married women in a third, and the widows in the fourth. They sleep in dormitories. They are neither Calvinists nor Lutherans. When a Moravian brother wishes to marry, he draws lots and is compelled to wed the lady whose ticket he draws. Hence, it frequently happens that the young man is obliged to marry a damsel of 75 years. The women all wear the same costume, except that the married women have a crimson ribbon in their caps, the widows a black one, and the spinsters pink. I recollect an unfortunate inadvertence on my part in regard to these pink ribbons, which caused me much embarrassment, which I only relate here because this book is for myself alone. At the time of my journey in Holland, I was as absent-minded as now, but had in addition the delightful habit of replying to every sentence sentence to which I had not listened by the word why. In returning from Zeist, we were proceeding slowly in the carriage, while Monsieur de Saint Aignan, who was on horseback, was exclaiming against the barbarous custom which compelled the Moravian brothers to draw lots at the risk of obtaining a damsel, lame, ugly, or hunchbacked. And he said, if I had been in that plight and obliged, notwithstanding my entreaties, to marry the lady, would have kept the pink ribbon all her life. I, being 100 leagues away from the conversation, replied with the utmost sang-froid, but why, monsieur? He made no answer. The Duchess burst out laughing, explained the whole story to me. I was so embarrassed I dared not look at him for several days and refrained for at least a week from using the unfortunate expression, why? When a brother or sister dies, no bells are rung, but the flute is played, which I think gives a far more delicate idea of death. They never use the word die, but say, return from whence we came. Half an hour beyond Neuwied are the ruined foundations of an ancient Roman city. Beyond again is a mountain gorge, before which stands the town of Andernach, whose walls and towers bear witness to their age. On the left bank of the river, at some distance from this town, there used to be a convent, which still looks as though it had once been very large. It was founded in the 12th century by the Countess Genvides of Spadheim. After passing Andernach, we had breakfast and played faro, at which I was given a lesson, but was so wearied by it that after half an hour I returned to the bridge, where I found such a strong wind there was danger of being blown overboard. The mountains are quite bare and present a wretched appearance. To the left of Leutsdorf is the small village of Namdi, in which are the ruins of Geinneck, and on the right those of Hammerstein. Above them is an ancient castle of the Templars, destroyed in 1200. After passing Ehrenfels and Ariendorf, one sees the rock of Erpele, a block of granite 700 feet high. Linz is close to Datzenburg, Breisig, and Sinzig, with the old castles of Obuskin and Landskron, and here the Rhine forms the lake, which is the frontier of the Prince of Nassau states. The air joins the Rhine here, and in stormy weather is said to become very dangerous, causing many shipwrecks. Half a league from Rheinmagen is the little town of Unkel, where the river is also very rocky. From this spot can be seen the 7 mountains, Siebenberge, far famed as having been the principal abode of the invisible tribunal. Formerly each was crowned with a castle. Now only those of Drachenfels and Stolzenfels are left. The others were destroyed before the year 1000. There is still a chapel on the Lowenberg. The stories told the secret tribunal have always filled me with a particular fear. I should not like to have lived in those times, for this fear is justifiable when one realizes that at times even peaceable knights are said to have heard a rapping at their door, on which was posted the following morning in order to present themselves on such and such a day at a crossroads to be judged by the secret tribunal. If they did not appear at the third summons, they would either be found assassinated in their beds or hanging from a tree on the highway, placarded with the announcement that the secret tribunal had exercised its just vengeance. The members of the tribunal always wore black, were disguised with masks, and never showed themselves by day. They passed judgment in grottos or caverns and represented persons of all classes, from the prince to the lowest order of the people. This dread tribunal lasted from the year 1000 to 1300 or 1400. I know that whenever people talk to me about it, I have terrible dreams. This happened to me at Cologne. Oberwinter is on the left bank of the Rhine, in a very smiling country where some exceedingly pretty little valleys lie beyond this town. Several weeks should be given to this voyage on the Rhine to examine all the picturesque sights at leisure. Oberwinter is almost at the foot of the 7 mountains, and opposite to it there is a wooded hill on which 2 faces of wall are all that now remains of a large castle called Rolandsack. Nonnenwerth is another island on the river, resembling a pleasure ground and having in the center a very fine convent, in which there are still a dozen nuns who were permitted by the emperor to remain there on condition that they do not receive any novices. We saw them as we passed, dressed in black with violet fichus. They looked very old. The inhabitants tell a story about the foundations of this convent, which is true and may be read in the archives of Cologne. Roland, nephew of Charlemagne once lost his way and was obliged to beg hospitality at the castle of Drachenfell, whose lord received him with the utmost cordiality. He was served by the baron's daughter, who was beautiful as the day, and offered him wine and bread. Roland fell in love with her as soon as he saw her. On leaving the following morning, the baron asked his name, and Roland gave it with modest blushes, for his courage and loyalty were made known in song by the people. The old baron was pleased at having welcomed such a guest, and begged him to remain another day. A glance from the youthful Hildegard persuaded him. On that day Roland found occasion to tell her of his love. She was seated under an apple tree, wearing a garland of flowers, and her lovely fair hair, meanwhile playing with the birds. All trembling, he told of his passion, while Hildegard looked down and blushed. Having kissed her hand, he vowed eternal fealty to her. Next day they parted without words, nor did Hildegard weep, but was overwhelmed with melancholy. She climbed the tower to gaze upon him once more, and when she could no longer see the knight, her tears flowed fast, owing to a dread presentiment which robbed her of all gaiety. Each day she spent in prayer, vowing to wear the veil until he returned, and if he did not, then to retire to a cloister for the remainder of her life. After this, her father's castle was besieged by a neighboring baron. Hildegard hoped that Roland would come to deliver her, but he came not. Secretly she sent a messenger to him, who returned with the good news that he was on the way to rescue her father with a considerable body of men. Roland, in fact, arrived next day and attacked the assailants, while old Drachenfels made a sortie to aid him. Night came on during the battle, with the result that it was no longer possible to distinguish between friend and foe, and Roland had the misfortune with his own hand to slay the father of Hildegard. The enemy fled at every point, and Roland was victorious at the moment when he perceived the old man before him. The damsel arrived with retainers bearing torches. She gazed fixedly upon the corpse and clasped the hand of the knight. She said, "You have committed no murder, but we must part. I feel that the soul of my father forgives you at this moment. You came to help him, but your hand is stained with his blood, and I dare not grant you mine. I can only give it to you before we separate. Our love must change to mourning. Heaven has willed it, and even if our hearts suffer, we must submit to the decree. After burying my father, I shall go to the island convent. If you have courage to be constant until the life eternal, we shall meet in paradise." Roland felt all the purity of his mistress's love. He swore eternal fidelity, after which they parted sadly. Hildegard became a nun in the convent on the island, and Roland built himself a castle opposite upon the mountain. He spent whole days at the window, gazing upon the convent. At break of day, when he heard the bell for matins, he listened to the chanting and fancied he recognized the voice of Hildegard. When at night he detected a glimmer in some dark cell, he imagined it was his lady praying for him. At the end of 2 years, on a gloomy autumn morning, as he looked out as usual, he noticed a grave was being dug in the cemetery of the convent. Filled with gloomy foreboding, he dispatched a messenger to the convent and heard that Hildegard had departed. He saw her body placed in the grave and listened to the last farewell of the living as they chanted for the dead. The following spring, he saw the first flowers spring up over her grave. The next year, he too was gone.